The following episode of the Milcam Sessions contains mature subject matter. Listener discretion is advised. The Milcam Sessions present the 7th episode Cryptacular, with 3 terrifying tales of obscure cryptids. Do you suffer from arachnophobia? If you don't, after the tale of J'ba Fofi, you will. If you ever needed a reason to stay out of the water, I have one for you. Gustave The Man-Eater. A crocodile that hunted for sport with an alleged kill count of 300 human victims. But first, Cam will tell you the story of Two-Toed Tom, a menacing red-eyed reptilian specter said to haunt the swamps between Alabama and Florida. So join us for these 3 cryptic tales.
What legendary beast stalked and terrorized the swamplands of Alabama and Florida in the early 20th century? Why, a mean old gator by the name of Tom, Two-Toed Tom to be specific. Although the region is known for its gators, Old Tom was special, being particularly fearsome due to his size. Some accounts state that he was about 14 feet in length, the upper limit usually seen in gators. However, other reports claim he was between 18 and 24 feet in length, a veritable monster of dinosaurian proportions. An interesting thing about alligators is that they age quite differently from humans. Although not technically immortal, their cells don't age the way humans do. Unlike humans, their DNA doesn't degrade over the years, as they have an efficient way of maintaining their telomeres, the protective caps at the end of DNA. They are considered to have negligible senescence, which means incredibly slow aging. And they also have indeterminate growth, meaning that they will continue to grow and grow as they get older. Essentially, if one can find enough prey to sustain its growing body, and if it can avoid traps and the dangers of the swamps, an alligator can live a very long time and get very, very large. The legend of Two-Toed Tom states that he was indeed very old. As he got older, he got bigger, and as he got bigger, he got hungrier. Alabama farmers in the turn of the century would notice frequent losses of their cattle, soon realizing that they were all being hunted and dragged into the water by the same gator. If Two-Toed Tom's size didn't strike a fearsome figure already, the legends also claim he's sporting bright red eyes, which flared demonically in the blackness of the night. Many a farmer would come home hurrying out of their house in the middle of the night, a shotgun in hand to defend their cattle, only to see their livestock missing, and 2 hellish orbs in the blackness before it slipped away into the murky depths. You might be wondering, and yes, Two-Toed Tom was indeed rumored to have only 2 toes on one of its front legs. It wasn't uncommon for gators to run into man-made traps and become maimed. Perhaps an injury from a trap is what fueled his aggressiveness towards humanity? Whereas most alligators are wary of humans and tend to avoid direct confrontation, Tom was very brazen. He was also likely very hungry. A big gator's gotta eat. Small game just wouldn't be enough for a mean old Tom, so this might also explain his behavior and choice of prey. In his 1934 book, Stars Fell in Alabama, Professor Carl Karmer tells of how Two-Toed Tom eventually expanded his diet beyond livestock, being eventually known to eat several men and women, and striking fear into the hearts of the locals in the region. Things got so bad that a bounty was ultimately placed on Tom's head. The bounty attracted many to come and hunt for Tom. Most notable was an old sharpshooter from the Civil War. Unfortunately, despite camping out and waiting for over a week with his gun at the ready, he never spotted the legendary alligator and could not claim the bounty. Arguably the most notable human to actively hunt for Tom was a farmer named Pat Haynes. Haynes vowed revenge on Tom after he, one day, found his favorite mule brutally torn to pieces, with massive 2-toed footprints found nearby. He acted impulsively after discovering the slaughter of his mule quickly rounding up some family and collecting several sticks of dynamite. They tossed 15 sap buckets worth of dynamite into the pond known to be claimed by Tom, absolutely destroying everything in sight. With the copious amount of dynamite used up and the pond basically obliterated, Haynes and company packed up and returned home. But what awaited them was a tragedy they could never have anticipated. On his way home, Haynes heard a horrific scream, prompting him to hurry. He thought he recognized that scream, but prayed that he was mistaken as he rushed home. When he arrived, he found the mangled remains of his 12-year-old granddaughter, who had likely come out of the house to see what all the explosive commotion was about. Fresh, crimson-soaked, two-toed footprints were found near her body. Two-toed Tom had not only evaded destruction, but he enacted a truly bloody and vengeful act on Pap Haynes, before lumbering away into the dark swamp. From there, with his favorite pond destroyed, it seemed Two-Toed Tom moved on. Another legend tells of him being forced out by a literal angry mob with pitchforks. Possibly the girl's death was seen as the last straw needed to unite the town against him. The people of Alabama had had enough, and their show of force might be why his next move was to migrate to the Florida Everglades. He was sighted shortly after in Sand Hammock, a 75-acre lake near the town of Esto, Florida. His distinctive two-toed tracks and massive size confirmed his presence at the lake. Additionally, cows and pigs started to go missing from the surrounding farms, fitting Tom's hunting pattern. Esto locals who encountered Tom would try to shoot him, but would report that the bullets bounced off his hide, like dried peas on a tin roof. The townsfolk of Esto would also hear a loud bellowing that seemed to follow the whistle of the Alabama-Florida Lumber Company, which marked the shift change. This led to some theorizing that Tom mistook the loud steam mill whistle as the call of a potential mate, causing him to bellow in response. Maybe on top of being hungry, Tom was also lonely? Over time, sightings and footprints became less frequent. Two-Toed Tom faded more into myth rather than an active and real threat. Tom seemed to have moved on again, basically going radio silent for a period. That is until the early 80s, when large two-toed footprints were found on Boynton Island on the Choctawhatchee River near the community of Redhead, Florida. Elders who remember the tales from decades ago, or who had even seen his footprints themselves back in the day, were shocked at Tom's resurfacing. Many wondered how a beast that old could still be alive. Although there haven't been any reports of massive gators fitting Tom's distinct description since the 80s, the legend is kept alive by the Two-Toed Tom Festival in Esto, Florida, which has been an annual event that has been celebrating the legend since 1987. It has been decades since any serious reports of a gator matching Tom's description have been reported. Could this current absence be an indication that he's finally passed on? Or could the massive creature still be out there? The oldest age a gator was recorded to ever live to is 90 years old. However, alligators could, in theory, keep living provided that they can still find prey to sustain themselves. Could Two-Toed Tom be lying in wait in the Florida Everglades, keeping a low profile while continuing to hunt, eat, and grow? In the Florida swamps, it might be best to remain wary of red-eyed stares and two-toed footprints, just in case. And we are back. The first story was Two-Toed Tom. Miller, what are your thoughts on Tom?
So, I like the fact that, with the Two-Toed Tom aspect, the name right off the bat honestly makes me think of like an obscure wrestler.
Which one?
Like just the name itself, like not an actual wrestler, but I could see a name of a person like in ring named Two-Toed Tom, or like a boxer. I could hear like the announcing and everything, where you could be like, coming down the aisle, weighing in at 257 pounds from wherever, Alabama, Two-Toed Tom. But that's just me. But getting back on the actual seriousness of the story, the one thing that kind of jumps out at me right away is the fact that he was obviously a giant, like much larger than a regular alligator in that area. Because I mean, I know obviously in Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, etc., um, alligators and even to a lesser extent crocodiles are very common, and
Mm.
um, having to keep them kind of or be wary of them, I guess I should say. If you have livestock, if you have young children or people, that make their living near the water. Um, but one thing I will say, like, I like what you did, explaining that how crocodiles and alligators age differently because of a component in their DNA. Because that was actually
Yes.
something I wasn't familiar with. Like, I loved as a kid, especially, reptilian creatures. I literally got like multiple movies just about crocodiles that were like documentaries from Blockbuster and stuff.
Oh, I
But
didn't know you were that into crocodile
oh yeah,
movies.
yeah. Like if you met me when I was a kid, I had somewhere in the neighborhood of like 30 different toy crocodiles.
Whoa.
And and I actually have a giant one that's like a pretty good like a good replica. It's probably about 3 feet long, and
Okay.
and
So
it
that's why when I
actually
told
looks
you
authentic.
this
Yeah,
story, you just had Gustav ready to go, which is our next story that we'll cover. But
exactly.
yeah.
But I like that, even if it's something that I feel I have knowledge of, I love the fact that I got to learn something new about
Mhm.
their DNA component. And that also made me think of the Galapagos turtles, that live to be over 100 years old,
Yeah.
probably for a similar reason because they're reptiles as well.
It, I don't know anything about turtles, but I did do some research about alligators for my story, and I found it really interesting how it was bringing up material I had learned. I have a education that's a science background, and just seeing the application of that and being reminded about how like the concept of senescence, which is like basically when a cell divides so many times, eventually the DNA degrades and it just stops dividing. But
Hmm.
they have a better way of preserving their DNA, alligators, and they don't die in the same way. They don't break down in age like humans do, and I find that really interesting. I find that to be like a really fascinating topic, and I had to include it at the risk of being a little bit too nerdy, but I just found it so fascinating that I was like, well, it's going in here. It's going in the
Well,
story.
well, spoiler alert. I mean, if you guys can't tell already with The Simpsons and the Goosebumps episodes and previous
Yeah.
incarnations of the Milcam sessions, we are both nerds and embrace it. So,
Shocker.
right? Spoiler alert, we're nerds. But that's why I wanted to bring that up right away because I genuinely thought that was fascinating too. Um,
Yeah.
you know, and rather than jumping into the scary portion of the story, which it is, I like that you've got the scientific variant first to kind of ease your way in and maybe hook the viewer with something fascinating on the educational side of things. But
Yeah.
that said, um, you know, I like that you did a great job here explaining the bright red eyes of Two-Toed Tom,
Thank you.
and I can I could even picture it, being visually impaired. Like I could see, hey, these bright red eyes that look like two hellish orbs. I would be thinking, well, what the hell is that? And
Yeah.
I don't want to go anywhere near it, but also I'd be curious. So you'd want to maybe be out there with like a pair of binoculars or something, seeing if you can somehow find it and figure out what those eyes are. And the other thing too, like I actually kind of was rooting for Two Toed Tom at some point because he he kept making sure that he could escape um,
Yeah.
anyone that was hunting him, and knowing that he lost his toes because of a trap. Like I actually was genuinely upset about that because
Mm.
you know I get that people want to protect their livestock. I get it, But at the same time, alligators are just doing what alligators do.
Of course, yeah. And he's a big gator. He's a huge guy, and um, I think I put some speculation in the story about why he may have turned to human prey. Um, but I think what I didn't include is it could be that um, it's the story that gets embellished a bit. Like maybe he attacked one person one time, or what have you, and then he just developed this legend. I know there's one clear story of him attacking a person, which is Pap Haynes' granddaughter, which is was a tragic event. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we really don't know. Maybe it was more of he was just an annoyance for farmers, and he was uh, stealing their livestock. And don't get me wrong, that's a big issue as well, because they have their livelihood based on their livestock. But yeah, I think a lot of the facts about Two-Toed Tom are kind of uh, blurred about what's actual fact and what might be more of legend. Like even his size, at the lower estimates, he's 14 feet in length, which is like the upper limit of a typical gator. So he might be just like the biggest typical gator that we see, or he might be a little bit bigger. He might be anywhere from like 18 to 24, which is even more substantial.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the story of the fish that with each telling of the tale becomes larger? With each telling of the tale of this gator, he becomes more ferocious and more fearsome. It's really hard to say, but I think one part of the story I really wanted to hear your reaction to was um, the the 15 sap buckets of dynamite used to blow up his pond, essentially his habitat. Like it seemed almost like cartoonish. Like I don't even know how to visualize that in my mind. It just seems
That's
like Elmer
that's just
Fudd
it.
like.
Yeah. I that's what I was thinking, honestly. I didn't think Elmer Fudd. I was more thinking like Coyote and the Roadrunner.
Oh, that might be better. Yeah.
But no, but both work. I get where you were thinking Elmer Fudd because of it being him being a hunter, right? But
Yeah.
I could just picture this guy. He's all gung ho, you know, puts in all these all this dynamite, and blows up the lake, but then or blows up the pond rather. But then it obviously doesn't work. Um, and it just makes me think it's like that crazy redneck ingenuity as well, where they just think,
Yeah.
oh, rather than having like a scientific method to try to catch and release the gator. Oh hell, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna get 10 or 15 buckets full of dynamite, and we're gonna blow up his pond. So no, I was genuinely laughing when I read that. Like I was laughing my ass off. I'm not gonna lie. and and I'm and before I finished, like part of me was honestly hoping that like he blew himself up just because of the
Oh,
whole absurdity of the whole thing. Because you know, I feel bad that his 12-year-old granddaughter was the victim rather than
yes.
Pap himself, because the granddaughter is innocent in all this, and it's very sad that Tom got a hold of her that way. And I mean, it would be mind-boggling to think that in his reptilian brain that he was able to put two and two together and be like, oh well, you blew up my pond, well I'm going to take your granddaughter. I think it was just an unfortunate set of circumstances where it just so
Yeah.
happened that this 12-year-old girl was there. But either way, the coincidence of that is just absolutely mind-boggling, and was, I say, probably the most fascinating part of the story for me.
I it's a very colorful part of the story, and I'm curious like how you would even imagine it, because I think of a pond, it's like a hole covered in water, or like filled with water. If you blow that up, like, do you just make the hole bigger? Like, do you blow some trees into the pond? Like, how do you even destroy? a water pond by blowing it up with dynamite. Like, he must have had so much that it just like blew the water in every direction, and then the water scattered. Like, I don't even know his thought process. Like, that would have not been
Yeah.
where I went with that idea. Like, if I wanted to retaliate against Tom and get rid of his home, I don't think I would have been like, yeah, nuke it from orbit. You know?
It actually kind of reminds me of an unsolved mysteries case. It's not animal related, but it will tie in.
Okay.
Um, there's a really well known case in Cleveland called the Cleveland Torso Slayer, and it
Mm.
was Elliot Ness, who was very well known as um, the guy who brought down Al Capone in Chicago. But then he
Oh
transitioned
yeah.
to Cleveland and became chief of police, and he was trying to solve the Torso Slayer case. So what he did, which was very similar to what Pap Haynes did, was he was trying to find this Torso Slayer, the perpetrator, and he thought that it was a transient. So rather than going through this shanty town where he thought the killer was, he just decided to burn the whole town to the ground in hopes that he would kill um, the Torso Slayer. But of course, it didn't
Oh,
work.
really?
And
So
it's
did he kill um, uh, many other people in his goal of this, or what happened?
he didn't really care about the consequences. Like, this is something that I knew from Unsolved
Wow.
Mysteries, so I don't know if he ordered like an evacuation and then said, "Hey, I'm going to burn this place to the ground," or he just did it. But
Hmm.
either way, it didn't work, and it's kind of the same thing here too. But what I'm thinking with the dynamite, it's like I wonder, did he put a bucket along the shore? You're right. Did he knock down a bunch of trees to block it? Did he literally just dump a bunch of dynamite into the pond and then just you know?
Yeah.
Because I I just, if it goes into the pond, like, wouldn't it be potentially useless if it got soaked? Like, I have no idea how dynamite works. I'm not a demolitions expert, nor should I be. It's
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe if it's in the sap bucket, you could have it floating, and then it wouldn't get damp. Or you put it around the outskirts of the pond, like all around the diameter, and then you blow it up. But like, I don't know. Surely there, maybe he was blinded by rage at losing his favorite mule. Like, I get that. If you have a pet and your pet is, killed by an animal, that's gotta be pretty terrible. But like,
for sure.
you know, just his wily coyote thought process of just like, oh, he lives in that pond. I'ma blow the pond up.
Right.
I love that.
I also had to laugh at one of the names, sand hammock. Like, I couldn't help
Yeah.
it. That was honestly one of the funniest things, because I'm literally picturing like this hammock made of sand, and
Hmm.
somebody just trying to lay in it, and it just keeps falling apart because it's made of sand. Um, but it's amazing that Two Toed Tom has that unkillable quality where basically he's like, oh, well, you know what? I'm not wanted in Alabama. It's like, fine, I'm going to go to Florida and I'll wreak havoc there. And then,
Yeah.
um, but it's neat too how like they found out. It doesn't sound like they definitively proved that it was him, but because they found cows and pigs that started to go missing, they found the tracks with missing toes, and the hunting pattern matched two-toed toms. Like, it definitely makes sense why they would be thinking that. And
Hmm.
I will say, kind of on a lighter side, the I love that he had like the loud bellowing where he's looking for love.
That's the theory, at least.
Yeah, I just thought that was kind of charming. Like, here's this gator, like, hey, I killed a cow for you.
I killed a cow for you. Please respond.
So I don't know. I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I like what you did there. How you had this way of, you know, kind of making two-toed Tom sound endearing in
Yeah.
some respects, right? And I really appreciated that. Like, I bet researching this was probably a lot of fun.
Oh, it was.
just
it was
based
a
on
ton
how
of
you
fun.
put it.
The story really drew me in. And no, he was endearing, and like I think it also speaks to the quality of storytelling of the region. Like they can
Hmm.
spin a really good yarn, and obviously there's quite a lot of conjecture about why he did what he did. Like at the end of the day, the most likely explanation is he's just a big gator that got so big that he was a bit of a menace. But all these human-like qualities are ascribed to him, like him bellowing in response to the whistle, and him, being so crafty that he's evading these hunters that are coming after him, and him, you know, you know, doing all these things, like leaving after his pawn was destroyed. Like, it seems like it gives him a lot of character
Hmm.
when this could have even been a few gators that are similar because there are traps that are in the region, so it's not completely unheard of that there's a gator with like a maimed um, hand, paw. So there could have just been another one that popped up, and maybe there are two or even more gators that kind of meet the criteria for being two-toed Tom, um, that are just kind of conglomerating into one single character. Like there was a
Yeah.
bit of a period where he went away and he came back. Like, who's to say that's not a similar gator, right?
That's the thing. It might be two-toed Tim.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, and I mean that's the thing. It could very well be an amalgamation, but what I like is there is, at least in terms of a cryptid like this, there's an element of realism to know that, like, oh, there was an actual gator that was seen and has hunted livestock and unfortunately has claimed human victims as well. But it's also tied into that legend. So it's really interesting when you get to hear a story about an urban legend or a local legend where there is actually some truth to it, and it kind of just gets embellished after that. But it reminds me of, even like what a politician might do, where if they genuinely don't like someone or something, they embellish it to the people to make it sound worse than it is, so they can actually, rally the people to be on their side to, get rid of what they perceive as a problem.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and I'm sure he was a problem. And look, if we lived in like Alabama or Florida, I'm sure that would have been like really scary having like such a huge fearsome gator creeping around, not knowing when it's going to strike or what it's going to do. Um, I do find it also interesting how the town of Esto, Florida, really kind of embraced him within like a
Yes.
period of a few years. Like something happened. I'm actually very curious, like why they suddenly were just like, actually no, this skater's amazing, and we're gonna make a festival every year about him.
Like, watch, they had like a festival about a mayor, and then they found out something bad about that mayor, and then they're just like, you know what? Let's just celebrate the gator. Like, why not?
Maybe the mayor's name was Tom too, and they're like, you know what? Why don't we made the banners already for Tom? Let's just make it for let's just reuse it, but make it for this two-toed gator that we know.
Picture them having like a little tunnel that's like shaped like an alligator. Kid go in. It smells funny in there. No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. But no,
Oh,
those festivals have been going strong for like since '87.
good year.
Yeah, very very good year.
Very good
Good
year.
year to be born.
Right?
Yeah,
That's right. 87 and 93, two fantastic years to be born. I mean, they coincide with
yeah.
our years, but that's coincidence. That's
That's
sure
besides the
coincidence right
point.
there.
Yeah,
um, but no, that's why I say, like, this was a really interesting story for me, both on a scientific from a scientific standpoint, and also just the whimsical and wonder about it, because there were some scary moments, obviously, but the fact that a town in Florida embraced what essentially was a livestock man-eating gator is really just a fun kind of whimsical way to carry on a legend like that, which in a lot of cases people might think is terrifying and maybe not want anything to do with, but it's a fun way also to kind of let kids know the dangers of going into an unfamiliar body of water, whether it be a lake, pond, river, what have you. Because I
Yeah.
mean, we like, because we're living in Thunder Bay and near Toronto respectively, like we don't have to deal with stuff like that, but
No.
there are things obviously that we have to be wary of. Like that's one thing I tell Dawson all the time. um when we like, Dawson's my son, for anybody who's who's wondering why I just shouted out a name there.
Yeah.
But I tell him that all the time. Like when we go swimming on Lake Superior, you need to respect the lake and be aware of where you are and what you're doing, because it's the sheer size of the lake that's what's scary, and the power of the water. Whereas in this case, it's a potential alligator that might, snatch your child, unfortunately, if they get into the water. And
Hmm.
that's why it's very important to pay attention to those things, but also celebrate a legend that means something to a small town, because they may not have much else that really would make them stand out and potentially be a tourist attraction. Because I could see them having like that Two-Toed Tom festival, having tourists come in. They probably have T-shirts,
Oh,
they probably have like Tom burgers and stuff.
I'm sure it does bring them some tourists every year, much like in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, for the Mothman. Like
Mm-hmm.
they do mad numbers in tourism just for having that cryptid legend.
Or
I don't.
even in Winnipeg, they have the Manipogo, which is a lake
Well,
monster.
I don't know if they how much tourism they get specifically for Manipogo, but I do know. Yeah, I mean, if I was in the area in Florida, I would try and go to Two Toe Tom Fest. Absolutely.
We'd be like
Um,
some of the few Canadians who would know who Two-Toed Tom is.
yeah, I also hope this podcast sheds more light on this cryptid and the other two that we will be covering because I think they're, somewhat underrated. They kind of almost fall in the category of cryptids that are more like uh, very highly possible. I would say like I would say they're very likely to exist or have existed. So like yeah, I think they should get some love.
100%. And it's nice that, to kind of shed some light on some unfamiliar cryptids, because obviously most of our listeners, if not all of them, would be aware of something like Bigfoot, would probably be aware of something like the abominable snowman. And,
Yeah.
when we started doing this, when you asked me to do cryptids, like my first thought was a Yeti story, which I can still do later on. But I was really excited once I found the information for my next story, which is Gustave the Man-Eater.
Mm.
Um, and then knowing that it actually is going to tie in beautifully with Two-Toed Tom is even better as well. Except I will say that my story is a lot less whimsical than yours.
No, yours gets a bit more brutal. And you
Yes,
know what? I hear a segue coming on. I think that might be the time that we can let the viewers be introduced to the next story, and we can then discuss.
sounds good. So the next story, as I mentioned, is Gustave the Man-Eater, which is a story of a giant crocodile in Africa that could have as few as 60 human victims or as many as 300, depending on the source that you believe. So I hope you guys enjoy this. But like I said, Cam's story set things up very nicely and was a little bit of a nice appetizer to kind of sink your teeth into and make it so that my story is a little more digestible, because his again had wonder and whimsy, and I'm really thankful that He shared Two-Toed Tom with me and with you guys as well, so I hope you enjoy the tale of Gustave the Man-Eater. Nile crocodiles are known as apex predators in Africa, but there is one who is rumored to be a serial killer. His name is Gustave, and allegedly, his body count exceeds 300 people. And not only that, but Gustave has managed to evade capture for decades. Gustave was also the inspiration for the 2007 horror film Primeval, but for the locals of Burundi, Gustave the crocodile is all too real. His domain is within Central Africa, from the Ruzizi River to Lake Tanganyika, a water system home to hippos wading among the reeds and fishermen paddling their dugout canoes in search of their next catch, keeping an eye out on the water while a giant crocodile lurks just beneath the surface. With an average length of 16 feet and weighing between 500 to 900 pounds, Nile crocodiles are the largest reptile in Africa. Gustave, however, is something else entirely. He is alleged to be 20 feet long with a weight of 2,000 pounds. Gustave's age is estimated to be 60 years, and while he is not the oldest crocodile on record, that being Henry, a 124-year-old Nile crocodile from southern Africa, who fathered 10,000 crocodiles, Gustave has still been alive long enough to strike fear in the hearts of multiple generations. Gustave's gargantuan size likely makes consuming smaller, more nimble prey items impossible, so he has to resort to larger, slower prey, including humans. Sightings of Gustave were most prominent between the 1990s and 2000s, while reports of his attacks go back to 1987. Nile crocodiles are well known as ambush predators, lying in wait to strike when an animal comes within range, dragging them to the depths via their trademark death roll, in order to consume their prey. What sets Gustave apart is that he has been observed killing humans and leaving their bodies behind. And it has been reported that Gustave plays with his victims before killing them. It's almost as if Gustave is hunting humans for sport. Gustave is unlike any regular crocodile because of his instantly recognizable appearance, consisting of 3 separate scars from bullets, along with a deep wound on his right shoulder blade, a physical map of surviving multiple attempts on his life. Gustave has survived being shot by hunters, soldiers, and apparently multiple rounds from a machine gun. The lore of Gustave expanded even further in 2004 when a team of scientific researchers attempted to capture and relocate him for further study. In order to accomplish their goal, the researchers constructed a cage 30 feet in length, weighing 2,000 pounds, baiting it with a combination of live and dead animals, while also utilizing infrared cameras to track Gustave's movements. Unfortunately for the research team, Gustave was wise to their trap and avoided it. At one point, the research team placed a live goat into the cage, returning the next morning after a stormy night to find the cage submerged with no sign of the goat. Whether Gustave ate the goat is unknown. The last reported sighting of Gustave occurred in 2009, and while he has been reported to have been killed in 2019, no photographic evidence or Gustave's carcass has been brought forth to confirm this. Some locals claim that Gustave died of old age, while others claim he still lurks under the murky depths of his watery domain. Even Gustave's kill count is up for debate, with local legends claiming Gustave had over 300 victims, with other accounts placing his kill count closer to 60. What complicates the facts is that the area where Gustave resides is rife with civil conflict, with bodies constantly washing up on the riverbanks. all of which may not be attributed to Gustave. Whether Gustave's body count is 300, 60, or a third unknown figure, his visible scars, sheer size, and witnessed attacks explain why so many killings have been attributed to him. Separating facts from fiction, one thing remains clear. Gustave has earned a unique place in history, and his legend will forever haunt the waters of Lake Tanganyika. Would you dare traverse these waters, knowing that Gustave may be lurking just below the surface?
And we're back. After hearing the tale of Gustave. Thank you, Miller. Yeah, and I was appreciating those eating puns, like that it's a digestible story, and sink your teeth into these two stories. Like that was appreciated. That was noticed.
That was off the
Glad to see
cuff as well. I didn't plan that or anything. It just kind of worked out.
that.
So okay, so what about Gustav? Like, what's your initial impression? What stood out to you first?
Well, I think the very first thing that I'm really liking is that um, these crocodilians are getting their own names, like Tom, Gustav. Every legendary crocodilian type cryptid, I think, needs like a name that's like a human name. You know,
That's fair.
um, something about Gustav is just funny to me. I don't know why. He just seems like a very, it's like a cultured name. It sounds like he's European, like a European croc living in Africa, doing his thing.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too, because Gustav to me sounds Slavic.
Yeah.
So, I can picture if they ever did like a Gustav cartoon, he'd just be like, "My name is Gustav the Man-Eater. Nice to meet you." Of course, that accent wasn't my best, but I hope you guys enjoyed it.
No, that was a great accent, and that's now my headcanon for what Gustav actually sounds like if he could speak. Um,
Fantastic.
but no, like the other thing is that, like, similar to Tom, like there are some of these, and I should also say, like, Gustav is a crocodile, whereas Tom was an alligator. I had actually planned to look up the exact difference between those two, but I haven't gotten around to it. So, Miller, I'll let you, if you know, you can jump in. But
There's
uh, yeah.
there's kind of an easy way to tell, and it's just looking at their snouts, because
Mm-hmm.
alligators are more broad and rounded, whereas crocodiles are more long and pointed. I learned that actually when I was, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years old from the fantastic show on TV Ontario here in Ontario, Canada, called Kratz Creatures. You guys had it in the States on PBS as well. And they
Mm-hmm.
had like an actual episode dedicated to crocodiles and alligators. That's how I knew that there was an American crocodile. I didn't know that. I thought there was just gators in in America, but they do have crocodiles as well. They're just fewer numbers. And then as a crocodile gets older, when they close their mouths, more of their teeth stick out. Whereas when a
Oh,
gator closes its mouth, you can't really see its teeth.
I see.
Kind of just the easiest way to describe that. But either way, I mean, they're obviously quite similar. When you were explaining the potential size of two-toed Tom, when it was getting, beyond 15, 14, 15 feet, I was like, we're getting into crocodile territory, because they're usually around 18 to 22 feet in a lot of cases, especially on the larger side. So
Yeah, they're pretty beastly. Like yeah, I think you kind of captured that in the story a bit. But yeah, like if you look at footage from like Florida, and you'll see alligators, like they get to be quite long, but a lot of their length is their tail, so they can sometimes be like quite long, but they look a bit smallish despite being
yes,
long, right? Whereas gators, they're just bulkier, They tend to be
The
bigger.
crocodiles are bulkier, yeah.
Yeah, or sorry, crocodiles are. But thanks for clarifying, because I knew it was something to do with the snout. I wasn't sure if there was anything else. But the other thing that stood out with this story was, it's just kind of a similar thing where he's just kind of a terror for the region. Like what's different in the story of Tom is that we have hindsight. Like Tom was active like 100 plus years ago, maybe up until the 80s. Um, so we don't have to feel uh, his murders or his killings as severely. There's that cloak of legend that like maybe not as many happened, maybe so we can kind of see him a bit more playfully. But Gustav, he's more recent, and he's
Hmm.
described as a serial killer, which just adds a very certain edge to him that Tom did not have.
That's the thing. Like when you say murder, I think that would more tie in to Gustav because of the fact that, by the sounds of it, when Two-Toed Tom ate, killed something, he at least ate it. Where Gustav would just kill for the sake of it and just, leave a body, on shore for
Yes.
someone to find. And that's obviously very uncharacteristic of crocodiles, because normally what they would do is they'll, and gators as well, they would drag a victim into the water, do their
Death roll.
uh, death roll, which is a
Yeah.
trademark, right? They've got it copyrighted. um, but and then drown the victim and obviously eat them as well, whereas Gustav would just kill someone and leave them there. And that's where I was like, oh man, I wonder what would have triggered a reptilian brain to think, oh, you know what? I'm not feeling hungry, but that guy's getting too close to the water, so I'm going to kind of teach him a lesson and
Mm.
and end his life. Um, but there is a bit of whimsy or legend to his story as well. How do you feel about the attempts to capture Gustav and how they went?
Well, I thought it was interesting in that it's kind of like that man versus nature story, which is like it's a very primal and classic story. Going back to Melville's Moby Dick, even. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the hubris of man to think that if we just make a big enough cage, if we just use our scientific knowledge to trap this beast, and it's usually kind of undervaluing their instinctive intelligence, thinking like surely we'll be able to trap them. But much as Tom kind of evaded capture, so did Gustav, and um, yeah, no, like I do wonder how that is like, and it's another case where it's a very large beast. Like maybe they're large because they're getting older, and maybe as they're getting older, their brains developing, they're getting a bit more wiser, so they can avoid you know the pitfalls of like getting into a cage or or what have you. And also maybe in the case of Gustav, like they're trying to lure it with like a live goat, but but he's doing well. Like if he's able to kill for fun, and he's like playing with his kills, then he must be so effective at hunting and killing. Then he's not as desperate as another animal might be, where they might
Yeah.
sense something's wrong and go after the goat anyways. Whereas Gustav is, well, you even said in your story he's an ambush predator, which is a particularly deadly style of hunting your prey. So he's basically like, no, prey has to come to me. I'm doing well. I'm a huge gator. I'm eating okay. I don't need to, you know, go after this mysterious goat in this strange contraption. I can just chill here and wait for humans or other creatures to come to me.
It would be funny though if he actually was the one that got the goat and just took it out. Like I feel bad for that poor goat because obviously it had no clue like what what was going on. But
Yeah.
the fact that something ate it, and or something happened to the goat, I should say, um, and it was gone the night before. But Gustav did want to interject because he wanted to say like, "I am not gator, I am crocodile." But
Well, yeah, it's another thing. Like, I guess it wasn't confirmed that he got the gator, or sorry, he got the goat, but maybe that's another fact of it being so intelligent that it was able to, you know, circumvent the trap, essentially.
I also can't help but bring this up too. When I was first reading the story, and it was talking about the cage, the very first thing that I thought of one of the few movies I've actually seen, Jaws. I think you're going to need a bigger cage.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually a pretty tight cage if you think about it. Like if he's, in the 20s of feet and they have like a 30-foot length cage, maybe they just needed like a 50-foot cage or something. Maybe that would have worked then.
Or they could have went the dynamite route with the cage and just caged off the entire lake somehow,
Yeah.
and then just be like, "Oh, you got nowhere to go. Now what are you going to do?" But I do like that in this case, they at least tried to do something humane for him, like with
Yes.
with this group of scientists. But it's funny because like, you also have the recklessness that you see in the two-toed Tom story with people shooting at it with you're shooting at Gustav with a machine gun or um,
Mm.
with rifles and things like that too. And what people don't realize is that gators and crocodiles, their skin is almost like armor. It's like armor plated, so
Yeah.
it could withstand something like a bullet. Whereas human skin obviously can't.
Well, I think, when we think of, fearsome animals, we always think, well, you know, we are man, we have our intelligence, and we have our weapons. So, like, if a bear comes after you, if you have a gun, you feel more secure.
Yes,
Whereas, like, if you take that away as like a viable means of defense, like if you have a creature like Gustav or like Tom, and you hear that like no, your gun might do absolutely nothing, it might just piss them off. That's kind of terrifying. So basically, if you see this creature, um, if you're too close, you're done.
yes.
I don't know if you could outrun it, but like I think they're pretty quick too. Like they're surprisingly fast for having kind of shorter, stubbier legs.
It's hard to say because I think if you're not near a water source, you might be able to. I'm not advocating that you try to outrun a crocodile or a gator on land. Okay,
Yeah.
this is
Oh
just
yeah.
speculation, but I'm not advocating that you do that. But I think that if it is on land, you may have a chance. But if it's near the water and it's the powerful lunge, because crocodilians, whether they be alligators or crocs, use their tail to propel out of the water and basically just launch up to the shore and grab whatever their is inside of them or in range of their striking distance. That's where you have an issue.
Yes.
Normally when crocodiles are on land or alligators, they're usually there just to basically bask in the sun and warm up, and then they'll go back into the water once they're kind of moving again, being cold-blooded of course, and not cold-blooded in the victim but or in victim count, but I mean cold-blooded as in reptiles or cold-blooded animals. But
Well, you
um
could say Gustav was cold-blooded in
oh,
both ways.
Gustav was definitely cold-blooded in both ways, yes.
Hmm.
And Tom to an extent,
Yeah.
especially when it came to livestock.
Oh yeah. He really liked those cows and pigs.
And I'm sure that Gustav could have got those too, because he obviously would have been intelligent enough to think, I can't go after the creatures in the water anymore because I'm big. So why don't I go after something that doesn't belong in the water or looks awkward in the water? Because if you look at a person swimming, we have fun there, but we're not built as aquatic animals. We're just not.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, if it's you versus a giant croc or gator or a shark, in 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the animal that wins out because you're in their habitat. And
100%.
that's kind of where I was at with Gustave as well. But it is interesting to know that, there are other possibilities like civil war, and bodies ending up on the riverbanks that could be attributed to Gustave, but may not. And
Yeah.
yeah, I wonder, like, these are people that maybe don't have access to forensic tools, because I don't know the state of Burundi. I don't know if it's, a poorer region where maybe they, I'm just trying to think how to word this as delicately as I can. They have their own, cultural and tribal beliefs that they maybe uh, live and work within, rather than, having someone who can come up and identify that a person has been shot, rather than, maybe attacked by an animal per se. But again, I'm speculating. I'm going to be completely upfront with that, because I'm
Yeah.
not really aware, right? Because it's interesting to think that, okay, you can say that this crocodile killed 300 people when there's also a civil war going on, and be like, oh, well, maybe, he didn't kill that many. But you could also look at it this way. If people want to cover up murdering someone, what's the easiest thing to do? Kill them,
Oh,
throw them in the
yeah.
water, and give them, make them be food for the gators or crocodile in this case.
It would it would be a very easy way to cover up murders. And I don't know enough about the conflict because sometimes in civil war or in conflicts you even you want the other side to know that you're winning, so there might be
Yes.
some circumstances where you don't want them to know who you've killed as a soldier, but others where you might want them to. Back to your point about like identifying the cause of death. I think I would lean towards that they probably have some way of telling, like if I'm sure they would be able to tell if it was, a bullet hole, or because a death by bullets versus death by, being, ripped apart by, crocodile jaws looks very different.
True.
But I'm sure, if there were, if they wanted to, after they've killed someone, make it look more like a crocodile kill, they could have ways to do that. Regardless, maybe it's not quite 300. That was like the upper estimate. Even if it was 60, that's still like a massive number. Uh,
Yes.
it's if you heard that there was a creature in your area that had killed, around 60 people, that's kind of horrifying in a way, right?
No, it really is. And, it would make you think, like, if I was a fisherman that went out there, if that was my livelihood, it's like, okay, you have to do it, but there's that inherent risk as well. Because what if, Gustav flips your boat, and then you're struggling, to get back in, or to even get to shore, you may not be able to make it. And
Mm.
it's that fear and intimidation factor. And you actually brought up a really good point, like the Civil War. Like, they may want to do that as almost like a warning to the other side, to be like, look, we have all these bodies here, leave us alone. Or even saying, oh, don't come and fight us on our turf, because we have a killer crocodile in our midst. um, so it's
Mm.
very interesting. But I like that, that Gustav has, his own legend as well, and it, gets inflated, where, they'll say, oh, he may have been killed in 2019, but there's no proof of that. Or that villagers say that he killed 300 people when, it may be closer to 60 people instead. But it's that same thing with Two-Toed Tom, where you start out with a story about an animal. It's real, it's genuinely inspired fear and terror, but then it gets exaggerated. And then, like how Two Toed Tom has his festival, Gustav was the inspiration for a 2007 horror movie.
Yeah. Actually, I wonder if I didn't put this in my story, but I wonder if Tom is the inspiration for what's that? There is a
Lake Placid.
another Lake Placid. Yes, I wonder if that was because I know that took place in the south, and there was a
Hmm.
lady that would like say, "Come and get it," and then like she'd have a cow, and then some massive
I was
gator
gonna
would come and grab it.
I was gonna bring that up because I know the lady was played by Betty White, and
Oh, that's right. I haven't seen that movie in years.
I actually just watched it a couple years ago because I did enjoy it. I actually watched it when it first came out as well, just because again I was really interested in crocodilians at the time, and it just seemed like something I would like. And it was a fun movie, honestly. But no, and that's the other thing that you'd worry about is like, are people feeding these animals? I would think maybe more so in two-toed Tom's case, because if it knows that it can get livestock or develops a taste for it, maybe it'll continue to keep attacking.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to say. But and you're right, two-toed Tom could be an inspiration, definitely for Lake Placid. I'm glad you brought that up, even though it was in my story, because they do tie in. But I did mean to mention that because of the cow. It was the very first thing I thought of, actually, was Betty White with that scene, "Come and get it."
That- That's a great scene. I can't believe I forgot it was Betty White, but I think I saw that movie when I was like quite young, like maybe 12 or something.
I think it's actually pretty accessible too. I think it might actually be on Prime, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, now I want to watch it again, actually. And Primeval I haven't seen, but uh, actually haven't heard too much about it, but maybe I'll have to check that out too.
That's the thing. I haven't really heard too much about it either, but it was just an interesting tie-in. And I will say, like, the one main article that I drew from was written by National Geographic, and that's kind of
Oh.
what I thought was really neat about the story. But I first heard about it through a YouTube channel called Fascinating Horror, and they did
Mhm.
like a little short on Gustave, and it was about 2 minutes long, and they showed images of him as well, which I thought was kind of neat to see his roadmap of scars basically through all the stuff that he survived. But I will say it's neat as well that we've got two cryptids from somewhere that's maybe lesser known in the West. We've got a story coming up as well in Africa, which is
Congo.
in the Congo, yeah,
Yeah.
which is obviously a terrifying area to be because of rife with conflict as well, but also
Hmm.
being wary of cryptids in a place where few people have explored because um, it's something maybe that we're not familiar with. So with that, unless there's anything else you wanted to discuss about Gustave the Man-Eater, I think we can move on to our arachnophobia inducing final
Yeah.
story.
Maybe it's good we left this towards the end because some people have very intense arachnophobia, and it might be like a hard no for some, which totally fine. We get it. But if you think you can handle a story about huge spiders, join us in the next story, which I will start now. In 1938, in Belgian occupied Congo, a British couple, Reginald Lloyd and his wife, were driving in their vehicle while out on expedition. They were getting deeper into the Congolese rainforest when they saw something strange run across the rough road ahead of them. Actually, it didn't run so much as scuttle. At first, they thought it was some kind of bizarre monkey or deformed jungle cat, but as their eyes had time to adjust, they realized in terror that they were looking at a massive spider. They described it as being at least 3 feet in length, brown in color, and having purple markings on its abdomen. Lloyd tried to capture a photo of this creature, but it darted into the dense brush of the forest before he could take the shot. Shaken by the event, the British couple decided to turn back. If this was the kind of horror one could expect on the outskirts of the jungle, then they had to seriously rethink their expedition. The Lloyd's account of a 3-foot-long, monkey-sized spider absolutely dwarfs the size of any known spider species. The Goliath bird eater only reaching lengths of 1 foot at its maximum. But despite these extravagant claims, stories of gargantuan spiders are nothing new to the indigenous peoples of the area. For untold generations, the Baka tribe of Cameroon and the Congo have whispered legends of giant spiders residing in the dark canopy of the rainforest. Their name for this beast is the J'ba Fofi. The Baka people's knowledge of this creature seems to be quite extensive and detailed. They describe them much as was seen by Lloyd and his wife. The J'ba Fofi are known to hatch from white peanut-like eggs, and when juvenile spiderlings, they appear as a vibrant yellow. As they mature, that yellow color becomes more brown, and they will typically grow as large as 3 to 4 feet in length. However, at their largest, some legends say that they can get upwards of 6 feet in length. Their appearance is described as resembling a tarantula or a trapdoor spider. The Baka people also claim knowledge about the hunting habits of these spiders, liking them to the trapdoor spiders, which use ambush predator techniques. They are said to dig elaborate burrows out of roots and webs, and they can fashion tripwires out of web to alert them to prey. Prey tends to be birds and smaller mammals, but they have been known to tackle more ambitious game. Larger mammals, and even humans, have been known to be ensnared by the J'ba Fofi from time to time. When the spider attacks, it is said to inject paralyzing venom into its prey before consuming its unlikely victim. Other stories have told of the spiders chasing down prey, guiding them into carefully laid pitfall traps covered by leaves and filled with webbing. Some of these more disconcerting legends from the Baka people tell of the spiders ganging up together to go on raids, where they will attack a village and carry off livestock, and even small children. The Baka say that the J'ba Fofi used to be more numerous in the rainforest, but have had dwindling numbers over time. Despite being fewer in number, they are not believed to be extinct, and still remain as a cautionary tale for anyone traveling too far into the rainforest alone. Although not scientifically proven, many wonder if the J'ba Fofi could be real, a creature lost to time in the depths of the Congolese jungle. However, some argue that a spider as big as the J'ba Fofi simply can't exist due to the mechanism of how they breathe. Unlike humans, who have a system of negative pressure to pump large quantities of fresh air into the lungs, spiders breathe passively through either trachea or book lungs. Both structures essentially allow direct diffusion of oxygen from the environment into the circulatory system. As such, their size is limited by the oxygen levels in the environment, as larger animals have a smaller surface area for this form of gas exchange. In certain prehistoric times, the oxygen concentrations were much higher, leading to fossils of giant dragonflies. However, under current conditions, most insects have to remain relatively small to functionally exchange the gas required for life. So then how could the J'ba Fofi exist? Well, perhaps it exists in a particularly oxygen-dense portion of the Congolese rainforest. It is the largest rainforest in Africa after all, and the second largest rainforest on Earth after the Amazon. Maybe with enough foliage, the oxygen levels could sustain the respiratory requirements of such a beastly spider? Or perhaps it's not a spider at all. Some have postulated that perhaps the creature is an unidentified species of crab. Think about it. From a distance, multi-legged arachnids and crustaceans could appear quite similar to one another. The coconut crabs, who often spend much of their time on land, can reach lengths of 3 feet 3 inches. They have been known to scavenge and completely devour the carcasses of large mammals, with them famously being theorized to have eaten the remains of Amelia Earhart after she crash-landed on the Pacific island. Perhaps a similar species of crab exists in the Congo. The coconut crabs are able to sustain such massive sizes due to modified gills called brachiostegal lungs. One wonders if a species of spider could have convergently evolved a similar set of respiratory organs. One rule of thumb about nature is, never say never. In a world with microscopic organisms that have evolved to thrive in sweltering geothermal conditions, is it really so impossible to imagine the possibility of a spider such as the J'ba Fofi? No, these creeping terrors have not yet been found or verifiably proven, but perhaps one day. For now, the tales of the J'ba Fofi persist through legend, and the occasional blurry trail cam footage that gets released from time to time. One final takeaway from this story is, if you ever visit the Congo, bring plenty of bug spray. And we're back after hearing the story of the J'ba Fofi. Miller, what initially comes to mind when you hear that story?
I'm someone actually who's not afraid of spiders, so I was honestly genuinely fascinated by this.
Even
Um,
if it was 3+ feet, you
well,
wouldn't be afraid?
it would be something that I'd be able to see and be able to steer clear of, hopefully. um,
Hopefully.
so that's something where I kind of look at that, and I just think it's honestly fascinating that something may grow that large, and I can't help it. But with the first paragraph, because you said that they saw something strange, the Ghostbusters theme immediately popped into my head. It's something strange.
In
J'ba
the Congo,
Fofi!
in the jungle hood. Who are you gonna call? I don't
J'ba
know. I guess there's no
Fofi!
one.
I guess there's no one. Um, but I like even that you went into different details. Knowing that when they're an adult, they have a brown color with distinctive purple markings that you would be able to see, especially on a spider that would be that long or that large, 3 feet.
Yeah.
Um, but okay, I just have a bit of a question based on something that you mentioned here. When you said that they were hatching, they were from peanut-like eggs. Would that be a peanut with a shell or a deshelled peanut?
I think you know as much as I do, dude. Like, I obviously haven't seen these eggs, but I'm kind of relaying this, which there was actually like someone did an academic style paper on the J'ba Fofi,
Wow.
and they also in that paper kind of covered, I'm forgetting the name of it, but that long neck cryptid that's a bit more well known from the Congo jungle. They covered both legends, and they really went into the cultural legends. So like what the people have been saying in the region, the Baka people about the J'ba Fofi, and yeah, that's where we get their description of the coloring, their description of the eggs, what they say happens when they're hunting, and you know, there's really like a treasure trove of info that we get from their legends.
Hmm.
And I find it interesting because it seems like they've known these creatures well enough to really have quite like well detailed uh, bits of information about it, such as like the size, coloring eggs. There's even legends about how they would go on like hunting raids. So if it was just a legend and not based in reality, it's very very plausible, and it's very specific in its description.
Yeah, and I think that's actually where it would scare me is seeing a horde of these gargantuan spiders,
Yeah.
attacking a village or raiding. Because it makes me think actually, like I know this isn't a real story, but it's a very well known urban legend where a woman is very vain about her hair, and she has a bouffant that she like vigorously takes care of, and somehow a
I know
black widow
exactly what
spider.
story you're telling
Yeah.
about. I saw it on Freaky Stories as a kid many
So did
times.
I. Yeah, I saw it on Freaky Stories first, and then they covered it in Urban Legends. And actually, when they did it in Urban Legends, that's when it genuinely scared me. Like, I actually
Ugh.
legit had like a vivid nightmare of like my bed just being covered in black widows. Um, so that's what I mean by that too. It makes me think of it of just this horde of spiders just kind of ravaging an entire town. That's where I'd be like, okay, you know what, this is a bit much. If I saw one of them, I'd be like, well, that's just a really big spider. But it's also neat too that it has the similar hunting techniques of a trapdoor spider, for example. I found that actually really
Hmm.
fascinating, um,
Yeah.
because just basically having a web that you can't see. Speaking of which, we're kind of dealing with that right now, which is really annoying. Um, we're dealing with a infestation of spruce budworms that are just worms that hang out on trees from like these giant things of
Oh,
silk. And oh
yeah,
my
they look like
god,
they're flying or just like they're
yes,
suspended, floating in the air.
yes,
I have a memory of riding my bike and then you go under one of those trees and then just like worms in your face
yeah.
as you're
Well,
riding your
that's the
bike
thing though.
by.
Like I walk outside, right, and I'm playing uh what the hell is that game called now? Wiffle ball with Dawson, and we're trying to find an area where it's like open where we can actually pitch and hit the ball. And it's like no matter where you went, you'd walk into a web, and then you'd have a worm land on you, or you'd at least have the web. And because I can't see it, like it's the worst, just having that feeling everywhere. So I can't help but think of that when I'm reading about the trap door. But then again, at least I'm dealing with something tiny rather than this like giant spider that could get some pretty good sized prey. And I tend to believe that this is possible because of the fact that we've got, Goliath bird eating spiders, for example, that are
Yes.
a genuine identified species. But one thing, not so much scary, but interesting, I liked the fact that you included the potential for this not being a spider, but potentially an undiscovered species of crab.
Yes, like the coconut crab.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I really tried to look into the plausibility because, we understand that, at one point in our history, millions of years ago, we did have massive insects walking the earth, and things changed over the many years, and now we don't. And we understand why. It's because the oxygen levels are different. It's not as concentrated anymore. So, in order for them to um, survive and get oxygen to every part of their body, they need a larger surface area. So, to have a larger surface area, you need actually a smaller body. And the larger you are, you have a smaller surface area and worse gas exchange. So, even there's a Goosebumps episode that kind of alludes to this, the like awesome ants episode, which I know you hate, but I actually liked
Yeah, it
that
is
one as a
not. It is
kid.
not an awesome episode at all, in my opinion.
It's very cheesy, but I liked it well enough as a kid. But yeah, like that's kind of why if you ask some scientists, they'll say no, you can't really get a spider much bigger than you know the the Goliath because it's the gas exchange just doesn't work. And to that, I'd say yes, that we haven't proven that it can get much bigger than that, but we just because we haven't seen it yet doesn't mean it can't exist. Doesn't mean it can't have some other differently evolved respiration method that is different than the typical spider.
Yes,
Or as you said, maybe it's not a spider. Maybe it's a form of crab, which has already a different type of respiratory system. And we know, like, there's an example of the coconut crabs are over 3 feet in diameter already. Like, that's a real world proven example that these things can exist. Do they exist for sure in the jungles of the Congo? We can't say until we actually like find physical evidence. But I think the legend really gives a strong case. And I really think like never say never. We have all kinds of weird and wonderful things in nature that you know um, it's entirely possible, and
yes,
especially with so many stories embedded in the Baka legends, like I would give it quite a bit of credence. Like I think we find very often that Western culture dismisses stories and teachings from indigenous peoples, and then we later find out, nope, that was very much rooted in reality in some way, um, and we shouldn't have dismissed it outright.
exactly. Um, and obviously, the oral tradition, just as it is in indigenous culture, is very prominent in Africa. Like a lot of things that they would like to do is, sit around a fire for generations and tell the stories of legends. And again, I'm going to bring this up. I always thought it was interesting. There was an episode that Kratz Creatures did where they did just that. They told um, African legends involving animals. There wasn't something to the extent of the J'ba Fofi or Gustave. It was more, aimed at children, of course, because it was a children's show. But
Mm.
I did think it was actually kind of interesting and small. I'm going to be honest. I had to write a animal legend for a paper in high school, and I may or may not have aped one of the stories and used it. But
Oh,
I don't
wait.
regret it.
Did you use Gustav for?
No, no. I
Sorry, which?
actually
Oh,
found it
oh, from Kratz
from Kratz
Creatures.
Creatures. Yes.
Which one was it?
So there was a story about how the rhino got its horn, according to African legend. And what happened was um, there was a big earthquake, and a bunch of animals came out of this hole in the ground and were running around, but weren't able to protect themselves from predators. So, a lot of the herbivores, were seeking protection. So they would go to a sacred mountain and request different types of horns. And
Oh,
they were given said horns, by a creator god. And that's how, an antelope has their set of horns, how a bison has theirs, etc. But the rhino showed up late because it just thought, oh, you know what? I'm this big animal. I don't need protection. And it had a friend named Kushin who was a white egret,
hmm.
and he basically told the rhino, you know what? I have horns I can give you. They're special. I'll give you these special horns. So come with me and we'll get you these special horns. So the rhino does. And what makes rhino's horns special, for those of you who aren't aware, they're actually a stronger version of what our fingernails and toenails are made out of. They're made out of keratin.
Hmm.
And because Kushin the white egret went against the orders of this creator god, he was punished to live on the rhino's back and eat the insects off the rhino's back for eternity,
Hmm.
because he defied the order of the creator god and gave the rhino a special horn without getting permission. So
Hmm.
I wrote that story, I think, in like grade 9, because I have a very detailed long-term memory. So I basically was just able to write the entire story from, my recollection of it. So I'm not going to say it was verbatim, but it was like one of the easiest things I had to do, because I basically had the entire foundation of that story just based on something that stuck with me as a kid.
Wow. I mean, that's a very clever way of approaching like a writing assignment because yeah, what's to stop you from doing a retelling of a legend in your own words?
Exactly. I do want to mention this briefly. I
Yeah.
have heard a number of theories about what happened to Amelia Earhart, but I haven't actually come across the coconut crab theory. Where did
Oh,
you
really?
where did you
It's
find that? Was that in the paper or was that somewhere else?
no, it's actually somewhat common knowledge. Sorry, not to like
I'm
sound like
uncommon,
yeah,
okay? I'll admit
sorry.
it. I am uncommon.
I say that just because you have a very encyclopedic knowledge of all things uh, cryptids and true crime. But no, it's a very widespread theory that that's what happened with Amelia Earhart because it would. I think it coincides with where her plane is believed to have crashed. It would
Mm,
explain why there were no remains found because essentially the coconut crabs don't like attack living humans, but if there's a dead human, they will scavenge it. And it sounds horrifying. Like there's quite a few of these crabs, like quite a lot of them, and they'll just like rip apart a carcass, eat it,
yeah.
and then go on their merry way. And that's why some people think, well, maybe if she crashed there, despite her disappearance being like this very enduring legend where people have wanted to know the ending to her story. Like, what exactly happened? People think, well, we might never find out because it her body might have been devoured by several massive crabs, and we'll never know 100% for sure what happened.
No, that's fair. Because I wouldn't say I have an encyclopedic knowledge of cryptids. I do have certain ones that I gravitated toward. But my experience with Amelia Earhart was more so Unsolved Mysteries telling of it, where she was allegedly, well, theorized to have been murdered um, in Saipan from Japanese soldiers, and there was actually an expedition where a person dug in an area where it was thought that Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan, that's her navigator, were executed, and they were executed with cloths put over their face, and they were able to find actually in this expedition years later um, a cloth that may have belonged to an execution victim, but they weren't able to verify whether it was Amelia Earhart or not. So
Oh,
that's why I say I hadn't heard the coconut crab theory, but I was very interested in that. But the theory that I had heard was that she may have been murdered and taken prisoner because the Japanese and Americans obviously were at war at that time,
yeah,
or maybe not entirely because I think it was in 1939, but still, they
right
were probably
before the
thinking, yeah,
yeah.
before Pearl Harbor. But either way, no, it was very fascinating, and I had to bring up the fact that coconut crabs may have played a part. And you know, I always say this too to anybody who's not a believer. It's always best in stories like this to at least keep an open mind. It's okay to be a
Yeah.
skeptic, but be willing to have your opinion changed. Because up until I believe the early 1900s, I want to say 1930s. Don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure. But there was a long
Mhm.
period of time where you would hear African legends about silverback gorillas and think, oh, there's no way that there's this giant ape that lives in Africa. But then once the Western explorers made it that far, they were able to come back with proof and say, yeah, we know that gorillas exist now because it's been in the lexicon for so many decades. But,
Yeah.
if someone is able to find proof that the J'ba Fofi is real and either bring back a specimen, have a video, that obviously isn't AI generated, God forbid,
Oh,
or
I should
altered
also
in
say
some way.
there is a recent video that I think it's within the last few years from a
Oh,
trail cam where they do think they point to it as like looking like the crawling of a huge spider. It's it's not really very clear to see, so I don't
okay.
think it's at all a slam dunk. But I had to really peer closely to it and like look at exactly where they were saying. And I think even then, it's like, well, yeah, that does look like it could be a huge spider, but it's so hard to tell.
And
Um, yeah,
because we're pattern seeking creatures as humans, you know, if we're shown something that our brain can't make sense of upon initial viewing, it's going to fill in the gaps to make it look like something that is familiar. So
yeah, and
if
we're
you see it,
suggestible too.
exactly, exactly. So it may be its own. It could potentially be its own species. It may not be a spider or a crab, but because
Mhm.
people's brains are accustomed to, hey, I've seen spiders before, I've seen crabs before. That's maybe what your brain is seeing. I could very well be wrong with that too, but either way, it's fascinating to know that there could be this potential giant species of spider that could exist in an area that is not largely explored because, like you say, the Congo being the second largest rainforest on Earth, how much of that has actually been explored by man? Just like the Amazon.
Well, exactly. And also it's an area rife with conflict, so it's probably lower on people's priority over there seeking out this cryptid and exploring the rainforest, like due to a lot of very shameful and horrible colonialism down there.
Yes.
It's war torn, and it's the Congolese people have really tried to persist, and I'm really rooting for them for what they're doing with the World Cup right now. Like they were able to qualify, but you know it it's been a really difficult region, and you know one of the many reasons that you would want things to get better there. This would be much lower on the list, below the humanitarian reasons, but if the region were to get better and the people were to have a safer living experience, then maybe we could look at, well, let's explore this jungle a bit more. Let's maybe look at the legends some more. Look to see if we can find where this creature could exist and actually try and prove it. But I think that might be a ways away.
No, that's fair. And I mean, the humanitarian reasons by far
Yeah,
are top of the list compared to anything else in terms of, human curiosity. But it
yeah,
would be nice to be able to get to that point where it would be safe for everybody, to explore that area and find out if a creature like the J'ba Fofi exists. Um, Especially, to get that understanding of, is it a spider that injects venom? Is it a spider that is a giant version of a trapdoor spider, or is it an unknown species of crab, or its own species entirely? Um,
yeah.
Either way, like this definitely hooked me. Like this story right from the beginning when I first read it, and then heard your excellent retelling of it as well when you sent me the audio yesterday.
Thank
It
you.
was,
You
but
flatter me, sir.
oh, I'm just being honest, and you know, I wish honestly for this one that we could have kept it real because, like, I know there were flubs on both sides. You should have
Oh,
heard me trying to say, the lake where Gustav was from on multiple occasions. I basically got fed up and like re-recorded it probably 3 times at least.
oh, I see. Yeah, that's yours was so easy to edit because I think you're a better talker than me. Like you're able to speak without getting tongue tied, but like obviously you were tongue tied a little bit, but
Yeah.
no, some of the story recordings I did, I just I need to edit my many flubs out so it sounds kind of palatable for the listener.
Um, no, and that's the thing. I'm not doing it to poke fun or anything like that because I would do it too. I'd honestly laugh at my own flubs. Like, there's a really good friend of ours who's actually a podcast subscriber. Shout out to our buddy Mark. Him
Yep.
and I have this habit from when we were kids where if anybody says a word wrong, we always laugh. And it's not to make fun of the person, it's just the actual sound of the word because we always found it really funny. Like, I've butchered stuff brutally and I will literally start laughing at myself instantly. I even do that on the recordings because I'm sure you guys may know this, but we record the stories first and then we record the discussion separately. And Cam does the brilliant editing job that I frankly would get fed up with because I'm just not good at editing. Um, but puts it together. And again, he's done a fantastic job from episode 1 all the way to episode 7. But this one in particular, I would have honestly loved to keep have the bloopers just for fun for both of us because it was challenging when you explore regions that you're not familiar with. You have to almost rely on things like translate, like Google Translate or things like that on how to say them properly. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense to your brain.
Yeah.
So I had fun with this, honestly. Fun with recording it, fun with researching it, and um, it was nice to shine some light on 3 lesser known cryptids and even learn some scientific facts along the way because we
Mm.
try to be scary, we also try to be educational, and we try to be fun. At least that's what I think when we do these. So
I think we checked all the boxes with this one. I had a particularly fun time researching these stories, especially when I tried to look into the science, and I, you know, I went very much, like that meme of Charlie Day with the whiteboard, where he's like, "Actually, I can prove," you know, and, and I was really trying to, you know, develop a sense on like how plausible are these, and I kind of left as a believer, Obviously, some of it might be embellished, but I think all of these creatures existed in some capacity, and they really they really show just how wild and dangerous our world can be, and how fascinating.
Exactly. And I think on that note, it's probably a good time to end things.
Yeah,
Um, so thank you all for tuning into something a little different, because we do try to have, um, you know, episodes running the gamut, whether it be true crime, paranormal, cryptids, etc. So I hope you guys enjoyed episode 7. The Milcam session presents the 7th episode of Cryptacular. And until next time, I'm Mill signing off. And
I'm Cam signing off.
cheers, everyone.
Bye, everyone.